Yeah, well, thank you very much, Alison, and the Foresight for opportunity to tell you a bit about our work. And yes, I mean, so for those who don't know me, I actually wear many hats. I'm a chair of molecular biogerontology, so I work on aging and longevity at the University of Birmingham in the UK. Also a visiting scholar at Oxford. I'm CSO of a company that focuses on cellular rejuvenation and longevity, developing anti-aging therapies. But most of what I'll talk, I mean, Alice asked me to talk about cryopreservation, cryobiology. So that's what I'll focus on today. And that's related to some of the work we're trying to do in a new company called Oxford Cryotechnology, but also in my lab. So as I'm sure you're aware, we can cryopreserve to some degree, I'll come back to in a second, biological materials. But there's a lot of challenges. The major challenge would be ice formation. So if you ever put anything in a freezer, it creates ice, and this ice, well, it shares, it destroys cells, it creates lots of kinds of damages. So that's a major limitation we still have in cryopreservation of biological materials. There are some ways around it. So in particular, we use antifreeze chemicals, called protectants, that minimize ice formation and allow you to cryopreserve cells, for example. And so what the current state of the field now is that, and we did this review a couple of years back that goes into in more detail, is that we can cryopreserve small cells and we can cryopreserve cells and small tissues, like corneas, for transplantations. So small amounts we can cryopreserve. Cryopreserve oocytes, we can cryopreserve eggs, for example. So we can cryopreserve small amounts and small tissues. But there's a major issue in scaling up to larger organs. Because they're bigger and it takes longer for them to cool down. So you'll have longer time that they're exposed to ice formation, to cryoprotectants, which cause damage. So that essentially is the problem. This has been the problem for 50 years, maybe even more. For decades, this has been the problem of cryobiology, cryopreserving larger organs. I think the good news is that it's an engineering problem in the sense that we know what we have to do. We know that we have to prevent ice formation. We know we have to minimize cryoprotectant toxicity. So we have to figure out chemically and from an engineering perspective how to do it. Unlike other fields, so as I said, my day job is working on biology and genetics of aging. Aging is not an engineering problem because we don't know why we age. So we still have a lot of fundamental research we have to figure out. Like Alzheimer's disease, for example, would be the same case, like type 2 diabetes. All of those are fundamental biological problems that we haven't figured out yet. In cryopreservation, we figured it out. We just have to now develop the tools and the methods and the engineering approaches that allows us to overcome these issues. And there has been some progress. So, for example, there has been embryos. We can cryopreserve small embryos that have been frozen decades ago and coming back to life. So if someone tells you, hey, nobody has ever been cryopreserved and brought to life, that's technically not true. Some people have been cryopreserved and brought to life. Okay, admittedly, they were tiny embryos, but that's a caveat. But that to some degree, there are people alive now that have been cryopreserved when they were very, very, very young, if you think about it. So, and of course, the impact of cryobiology could be huge. On one hand, we have a major issue, I don't have time to go into details, of lack of organs for transplants. So there's dozens of thousands of preventable deaths that occur every year because we don't have organs, hearts, lungs, livers, and so on for transplants. And that is a major medical challenge. So if we could cryopreserve organs, this would have huge medical impact. And I would argue that cryopreservation is a major longevity technology in that sense, because it would save thousands of lives each year if we could cryopreserve organs safely and efficiently. It has a lot of other applications in reproductive medicine, in storage of stem cells and engineered tissues, and of course, thinking further ahead, even in space travel. I mean, if we want to go to a distant star system that takes 400 years to take there, cryostasis and human biostasis would be the most reliable way to take people there. And of course, from a medical perspective, human medical biostasis or cryonics, of cryopreserving someone who has a terminal condition that we cannot cure, and with the idea of then being revived in the future, brought back to life, and then whatever disease they had or even aging, that can be reversed. So there has been some progress. I mean, this was an article in Science not long ago on liver cryopreservation and rewarming as well. Again, I don't have time to go into details, but the point is that it's an engineering problem. We can develop ways of figuring out chemical combinations and engineering approaches to overcome the issues that we still have in cryopreservation. So very briefly, what we're trying to do, for example, in our lab, also in Oxford Cryotech, is trying to apply machine learning and AI approaches to identify new combinations of chemicals and cryoprotectants that result in improved cryopreservation and safer cryopreservation by looking into molecular profiles of cryoprotectants, by doing data analysis and machine learning and so on, and then developing new formulations. So the goal, and you can visit our website, is to use this computational tool to create new protocols that allow safer cryopreservation of cells, tissues, organs, and ultimately people. I mean, I'm interested in cryopreservation and human biostasis. I think that's a bridge to the future, and that's the way. I don't think we're going to cure aging anytime soon, and that's really the way to the future, to a better future, as Alison was mentioning, is via cryo, human biostasis. So I'll just, speaking of the future, one thing I'll leave you before I finish is just that because this is a lot easier technology to develop, I do think, I'm sure we will develop reversible human biostasis long before we cure aging and all age-related diseases. So we will reach a point long before we have aging cure where we will have human biostasis. And then what happens? Are we going to have this large-scale cryopreservation of human beings as a medical intervention? I think that's a possibility, surely. So that's just something to think about. And with that, well, thank you very much for the time of attention. I mean, if you're interested in our work, I'm very easy. I haven't signed up for the thing, sorry, for the Foresight, but I'm very easy to find online. I have multiple websites. I'm on Twitter and social media, so I'm very easy to find online, and feel free to visit our websites for more information. Thank you for your time and attention.
So given that you were able to, it has been done that an embryo was frozen and unfrozen, is the fact that an embryo is mainly undifferentiated, and therefore are able to grow and sort of correct themselves, the reason why that works?
I think that's part of the reason. I think the major reason is that they're just very small. And, you know, it's just much quicker to lower the temperature. You don't have to use so much cryoprotectant. Well, if you have a bigger organ, it's just physics. You know, a larger organ will take longer for the temperature to cool down. And so the organ, it has more time for ice to form. It has more time for cryoprotectants to cause damage. So it's basically, it's a physical issue. It's basically an issue of size. Well, embryos, because they're smaller, it's like cryopreserving cells, it's quicker to do. You are right as well, an embryo will be more plastic and will be more resilient as well. So that probably contributes a bit as well.
Let's say that we crack cryopreservation, and that's great to hear for humans. What are the limitations for the revival side? Are there other scientific challenges to solve on that side?
Yes, no, that's a great question. I didn't really go much into the revival, and I mean, yes. How long do we have? 20 minutes, half an hour, 3 hours?
30 more seconds to answer this.
Okay, so in 30 seconds, I would say, yes, there's a couple of challenges. One of them is rewarming, which I didn't really, I mean, there's nano-warming, for example. We use particles, iron particles, for example, that it can then be rewarmed with magnetic fields. So there are ways around that being developed for the rewarming. That's one issue. And the second issue is repair. I mean, presumably there will be some damage to tissues, to cells. You'd have to repair them. So that's I would say that's still a challenge that we will have to face, maybe with nanotechnology or some technologies that we don't have available yet, or cellular rejuvenation and technologies like that. So yes, that's a great question, and that's still a limitation. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.